I qualified as a midwife back in 1991, and when I qualified, it was just as Changing Childbirth was being released. It was a report that recommended continuity of carer, one-to-one care, and all of those things. And we thought that it would herald a transformation of birthing culture. We imagined that birth would never be the same in the context of the cultures that women were birthing into. And to be honest, I qualified and went into a caseload bearing practice where me and a partner had our own caseload. And this led to 18% home birth rates. And for a while, things were going well. But as we have seen, looking back over 20 years, we've seen change, but we haven't seen transformation. Me and my best mate, Associate Professor Dennis Walsh, live in the same city, and we meet for a beer every month. And I have to be honest, our conversations are usually focused on bemoaning the fact that birthing culture does not seem to have transformed very much in the last 20 years. So why? Why has birthing culture not really transformed? Well, I want to suggest to you that inside an evolutionary model, it makes total sense. You see, in order for a species of animal to survive over time, that animal, and in this context, the human animal, has to be efficient at recognizing a pattern and repeating a pattern over time. Those of us that are alive today are the pinnacle of evolutionary development. We are experts at recognizing a pattern and repeating a pattern. Our survival depends upon it. It was those of us that could recognize patterns that constituted risk and then repeat patterns of taking ourselves away from that risk over time that led to us surviving till this point. There is an enormous amount of security in pattern repetition. Now, all of this is going on at deeply unconscious levels. Now, there's another part of the evolutionary model. In order for an evolutionary development to occur, there has to be a discontinuity with the patterns of the past. At certain points, something turns up in the system that has never turned up in that system before, and a new range of possibilities become available. Now, the human animal has one advantage over much of the animal kingdom, and that's our ability to speak, our ability to use language in order to define and in some ways create our experience is what separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom. You see, when it comes to birthing culture, what we've seen over 20 years is plenty of change. Now, change always has as its reference point what's gone before. When you think about change, you're often thinking about things being better than the past, or bigger than the past, or work more effectively than the past. The past is always the reference point. When it comes to transformation, the patterns of the past do not help. Something turns up in the system that has never turned up in the system before, and the patterns are disrupted. Now, given our history of being pattern repeating creatures, any kind of transformation unsettles the status quo of the patterns that have gone before. So how do we begin to transform birthing cultures? I want to suggest to you that at the heart of any kind of cultural transformation is our use of language. Heidegger said that language is the house of being wherein man dwells. We frame our experience as the human animal through the language we use consciously and the internal conversation that is going on at a deeply unconscious level all of the time. Each human, each Homo sapien is living inside the experience of the story they are telling themselves. Now we take that one step further, and the cultures that we practice in as birth professionals are being held in place by the languaging of that culture. Language has the potential to transform our personal cultures. Where does transformation begin? Well, first of all, let's be clear. We live inside our own personal culture or narrative that shapes the way our world occurs to us, that influences our relationships and our work. But as we come together with other Homo sapiens inside institutions, we are collectively creating a corporate culture, a larger entity. Some evolutionary biologists say what separates us as a Homo sapien from the other species of humans that were on the planet at the same time about 100,000 years ago was our ability to hallucinate something that wasn't apparent to our physical world as though it was the truth, and then to enroll other people into it. We've seen the effects of that in this recent election, where a narrative is created that others are brought into. That is going on inside our birthing cultures. It's a collective culture that's made up of individuals living inside their own personal narrative. The place to start when it comes to transforming a culture or birthing a culture is with the words we use to ourselves. And then, as we reflect upon the kind of words we use, speaking those words in a creative way into the cultures that we work in. You know, the article that comes with this video speaks about my postman birthing me a parcel and how ridiculous that is. And it's ridiculous because we sense the difference between the word deliver and the word birth. We sense there is a power shift. We experience it. You see, as we begin to use language that expresses where the power to birth lies, we begin to shift the culture. You see, we often think about the big things that we can do to change maternity services. But it's a small, you know, the Bible says in James that the tongue is a rudder. It shapes, it directs. We have the opportunity every time we open our mouths to shape culture. Those of us who are birth professionals know that we have lived with a languaging around birth that has led to systems that unwittingly often reduce a woman's sense of power. We have terms like failure to progress, lack of maternal effort, incompetent cervix. We have all of these words that are pointing a woman in a direction that's away from her intrinsic power to birth. I remember I did a return to practice 8 years ago, and I had to do a booking interview with a couple. And I had a mentor that was sat with me. And I remember saying to this couple, talking about the bloods that we offered, I said, look, now these are the bloods that we invite you to take. These are the tests that we invite you to take. And then I explained why we make that invitation. After that interview, my mentor said to me, she said, Mark, we invite you to take? What do you mean we invite you to take? That opens up the possibility that they might not do it. And I looked at her bemused, and I said, well, I thought that was the point. You see, when we begin to use the language of invite, something shifts inside our experience. Why does it shift? Why do we have that experience shift? It shifts because language is shaping and defining how we experience the world. Transforming birthing culture begins with me being aware of the impact of my words, firstly upon my own experience of the world and birth, and then upon the culture itself. Thank you very much.